Hello my dear children. So today we are going for a revision and I am not discussing the whole chapter. I am planning to discuss important concepts from each chapter. So first let's discuss the important concepts of first chapter, that is units and measurement. So in units and measurement we studied about fundamental units and derived units. So what do you mean by fundamental units? Fundamental units, certain units are chosen as fundamental units. So what do you mean by unit? Measurement of any physical quantity is made by comparing it with a standard, and such standard of measurement are known as unit. Okay, so if we measure length of a road, we will write 5 meter. So here 5 is the magnitude part and meter is the unit. So we can say that length of the road is 5 times that of a standard measurement, and that is called, that standard value is known as meter. So 5 times meter. Okay, and we have chosen a set of units as fundamental units or base units, and these are the physical quantities whose units are chosen as the fundamental units, because these are the fundamental quantities. So their units will become the fundamental units. So which are the fundamental quantities or base quantities? Length, its unit is meter. Mass, its unit is kilogram. Time, unit second. Electric current, unit ampere. Thermodynamic temperature, that is temperature. Temperature, unit Kelvin. Then amount of substance, unit mole. Then luminous intensity, unit candela. So these are the 7 fundamental quantities, and their units are the fundamental units or base units. Okay, then it is very important to know the dimensions of first 3 quantities, mass, length and time, because most of the units can be expressed, or the dimensions of most of the physical quantities can be expressed in terms of dimensions of length, mass and time. So it is very important to know the dimensions of length, mass and time. So the dimensions of length is capital L, mass is m, time is t within the square brackets. Okay, and after fundamental units we need to study about derived units. Derived units, from the name itself, units that can be derived from other physical quantities are derived units. Example, meter per second square. You know, meter per second square is the unit of acceleration. So here meter is there, second square is there. Meter and second both are fundamental units, and meter per second square is derived from this fundamental units. So it is a derived unit. Kilogram per meter cube, again kilogram is a fundamental unit, meter is a fundamental unit. So kilogram per meter cube is derived from the set of base units or fundamental unit. So it is a derived unit. Similarly, meter per second, which is the unit of velocity, is a derived unit. Kilogram per meter cube is the unit of density. It is also a derived unit. Apart from this, there are 2 important units, that is solid angle and plane angle. Solid angle is denoted by d omega and plane angle is denoted by theta. Unit of solid angle is steradian and unit of plane angle is radian. It's very important. So what is the unit of solid angle? Steradian. And what is the unit of plane angle? It is radian. Okay, and next we can discuss about dimensional formula. So we can discuss the dimensional formula of some important physical quantities. So first we can consider velocity. What is the dimensional formula for velocity? You know, what is the equation to find out velocity? Velocity is distance by time or displacement by time. Okay, displacement by time. So displacement is a length. So its dimension will be L. Time, dimension for time is t. So the dimensional formula for velocity will be L t raised to minus 1, because this t, when it goes to denominator, it will become minus 1. And second, we can discuss the dimensional formula for acceleration. Okay, acceleration A. Acceleration is change in velocity by time. So what is the dimension for velocity? We already got that. It is L t raised to minus 1 by time. So it will become L t raised to minus 2. Okay, so this is acceleration. And next we can discuss the dimensional formula for force. So force is mass into acceleration. So dimensional formula for mass is m, and dimensional formula for acceleration is Lt raised to minus 2. So we can write Lt raised to minus 2. Hence the dimensional formula for force will become mLt raised to minus 2. Then next dimensional formula for work. We know that work is force into displacement. So dimensional formula for force, we already got that, mLt raised to minus 2 into displacement is again L. So the dimensional formula will become m L into L square and t raised to minus 2. Okay, so dimensional formula for energy. What will be the dimensional formula for energy? See, the equation to find out, the unit of energy and work, both are same. So the dimensional formula for energy and work also will be the same. So the dimensional formula of energy is also same as that of work. Okay, so similarly we can find out dimensional formula of many other physical quantities. So what are the steps that you need to follow to find out the dimensional formula? First, you should write the expression or equation to find out that physical quantity. Then substitute the dimensional formula for each term in the equation. So you will get the dimensional formula for that physical quantity. Now, what is the applications for dimensional analysis? Mainly two applications are the first one, check the correctness of equation, and second one, deduce correct relationship between different physical quantities. Okay, so first is very important, check the correctness of equation. How can you determine an equation is dimensionally correct? So for that, you need to follow the principle of homogeneity. So what do you mean by the principle of homogeneity? See, for the correctness of an equation, for example, if you consider equation S is equal to ut plus half at square. This is the equation of motion put forward by Newton. This is the second equation of motion. So if you want to check whether this equation is correct or not, you need to apply the principle of homogeneity. And what is the principle of homogeneity? The dimensions of each term in the equation should be the same. Dimensions of each term in the equation. So this is the first term in the equation. So the dimension of this S must be equal to dimension of this ut. Again, it must be equal to dimension of half at square. So first you need to find out the dimensions of each term of this equation. So the first term is S. S means what? Displacement. The dimension of displacement is L. And the second term of this equation is ut. You know that u is the initial velocity, and the dimension of initial velocity is Lt raised to, or dimensional formula for velocity is Lt raised to minus 1. Then the dimension for t, next is t. The dimension for t is t. So here we have t raised to minus 1, here we have t. So when you simplify, you will get t raised to minus 1 plus 1, 0. So you will get Lt raised to 0, and t raised to 0 is 1. So you will get the dimension as L itself. Now, which is the next term? Half at square. No need to consider this half because it is a dimensionless quantity. It is a number. So no need to consider that half. You just consider 8t square. A is acceleration. So just now we got the dimensional formula for acceleration. It is Lt raised to minus 2 into t square. So this is the dimension of t square. Again here you have t raised to minus 2, t raised to 2. So when you simplify, you will get L t raised to minus 2 plus 2, that is 0. And t raised to 0 is 1. So you are left with dimension L. So again the dimension of at square is L. So the dimension of each term is L. Dimension of S is L. Dimension of ut is L. dimension of 80 square is also L. So the dimension of each term in this equation is same. Hence, by the principle of homogeneity, this equation is dimensionally correct. Thus, we have checked the consistency of this equation. So this is dimensional analysis. Okay, like this we can check the correctness of every equation. If the dimension of any one term of this equation is not equal to L, that means this equation is not dimensionally correct. Okay. The next application is deduce correct relationship between physical quantities. So in this case, we will derive or deduce an expression for the time period of simple pendulum. Okay, deduce an expression for time period of simple pendulum. So I have done that in the video lesson. Please go through that. Please go through your notes. You will get an idea of how to deduce the expression for the time period of oscillation of simple pendulum by dimensional analysis. So refer your notebook and study the steps. Okay. Only those question is expected. Only that question is expected from this part. Check the deduce correct relationship between the physical quantities. Okay. So derive an expression for the period of oscillation of simple pendulum. So just refer your notebook and study that derivation. Okay children, next we can discuss about significant figures. Okay, that is our next topic. Significant figures. Significant figures. So you must know to count the number of significant figures for a given digit. There are certain rules to find out the number of significant figures. It's not necessary to by heart the rules. Just observe it and digest it. So the first rule is that all the non-zero digits are significant. So all non-zero digits are significant. If you look at this number, all are non-zero digits. So all the digits are significant. How many significant figures are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. Here also 1, 2, 3, 4. Even if decimal is there, it doesn't matter. All the non-zero digits are significant. Now, second rule is that all the zeros between two non-zero digits are significant. See, if you look at this 0, it is between two non-zero digit. If you look at this 0, it is between two non-zero digit. This 0 is also in between these two non-zero digit. So all the zeros are significant. Here also, these 3 zeros are between two non-zeros. Okay, so these zeros are significant. So significant now figure will be 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now, this is the second rule. And third rule. Third rule is that if the number is less than 1, the zeros on the right of decimal point but to the left of first non-zero digits are significant. That means even if it is a decimal, if it is a decimal number, that means number is less than 1 means it will be a decimal number. So all the zeros to the right side of the decimal point, all the zeros on the right of the decimal point but to the left of the non-zero digits. Okay, so here which are the zeros to the right of decimal point? This is the decimal point and these are the zeros to the right of decimal point. At the same time, these are the zeros to the left of the non-zero digit. So this is the non-zero digit and these zeros are to the left of non-zero digit, to the right of decimal point. So these two zeros are non-significant. That means that trailing zeros are non-significant. Zeros in the beginning are not trailing. Zeros in the beginning are non-significant. So how many significant figures are there? We can ignore them. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is a decimal number less than 1. So here these zeros are not significant. So the number of significant figures is 3. Now consider these zeros. These zeros are the ending zeros and it is not a decimal number. So ending zeros in a non-decimal number also will be insignificant. Okay, ending zeros in the non-decimal number will be insignificant. So here these two zeros are not significant. The significant figures will be 3. And these two zeros are not significant. But this zero is significant because it is between two non-zero digits. So the number of significant figures is 3. Now consider this number 3.500. Here also two zeros are ending zeros. But what is the difference? This is a decimal number. Okay, so this was a non-decimal number, but this is a decimal number. So in the case of decimal number, ending zeros are significant. So here the significant figures will be 1, 2, 3, 4. Here significant figures will be, here I told you this 0 is not significant because it is to the right side of the decimal point. At the same time, this ending zeros are significant because it is the ending zeros of a decimal number. So the number of significant figures will be 1, 2, 3, 4. Here it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And apart from this, you must study the errors. Okay. All those are calculations, errors, and you must study the absolute error, relative error, and percentage error. Absolute error, relative error, percentage error. You must practice the problems related to absolute error, relative error, and percentage error. And also you must find out the rules, or you must study the rules in the calculations of absolute errors and all those things. Okay, rounding of digits, it is also very important, rounding of digits. So you must practice the problems related to rounding of digits and errors. And I have already given a number of problems to practice. So go through the problems again, practice those problems again and again, and be thorough with the calculation part. Okay, so with this I am concluding the revision of the first chapter, and we will continue this session with the revision of second or the next chapters. Okay. So next we can discuss the chapter motion. Next we can discuss the chapter motion in a straight line. So here we discussed about scalars and vectors. You had already studied about scalars and vectors in your class 9 physics. So scalars are those quantities which has only magnitude. Vectors are those quantities which has both magnitude and direction. And what do you mean by equal vectors? Two vectors A and B are said to be equal. Suppose these are two vectors. This is A and this is B. So you can see the length of both the vectors are same, and both the vectors are pointing along the same direction. So such vectors are equal vectors. Those vectors whose magnitude and directions are same. So length of the vector represents its magnitude. But at the same time, if you represent vector A like this and vector B like this, these are not equal vectors because these vectors are pointing along different directions or opposite directions. Similarly, these also form a set of equal vectors. Okay. And we studied two laws, triangle law and parallelogram law, in relation to these vectors, and both are useful for vector addition. You know, vectors are not like ordinary numbers, so we cannot follow the usual addition formula or addition rule in order to add these vectors. So for that we need to follow some special rules, and that rules are triangle law and parallelogram law of vector addition. So you must study both the rules very well. And here we need to specify the unit vectors. Unit vectors are denoted by I, J and K. And these are called unit vectors because these vectors are having magnitude 1. And these unit vectors I, J, K are orthogonal vectors. That means they will be mutually perpendicular to each other. And unit vector I will be pointing along the x direction. If you consider this as x and this as y and this as z, then unit vector I will be pointing along x direction, and unit vector j will be pointing along y direction, and unit vector k will be pointing along z direction. Unit vectors are always represented by a cap like this, and their magnitude will be 1. And in terms of this unit vectors, we can represent a vector. like this. So this is the representation of a vector. Vector A is equal to AXI plus AYJ plus AZK, where AX, AY, AZ are the components of vector along X, Y and Z direction. So if we want to consider resolve a vector, see, suppose this is the vector A, and if we want to resolve this vector, we must draw two mutually perpendicular components like this. See, these are two mutually perpendicular components, and from here draw a perpendicular to x-axis, and from here draw another line to y-axis, and this is the origin. So this component will be AX and this component will be AY. This angle will be theta. Okay, so this is the vector resolution. So AX, AY are the x and y components. Now if you want to find out the magnitude of vector A, you can use this relation. Vector magnitude of vector A is equal to square root of AX square plus AY square plus AZ square. So example, suppose vector A is 5i cap plus 6j cap minus 9k cap. Then what is its magnitude? So here 5 is the x component, 6 is the y component, 9 is the z component, because it represents AX, AY and AZ components. So magnitude of this vector A will be equal to 25 square of 5 plus square of AY square, so square of 6, 36. Even it is minus, when we take square it will become plus. So square of minus 9 will be 81 plus 81, and whenever you add 25, 36, 81 you will get 142. So square root of 142 is the magnitude of vector A. So like this we can find out the magnitude of vector A. Similarly, this angle theta can be found using this expression tan inverse of AY by AX. Okay. Or we can simply write tan theta is equal to AY by AX. This is enough. You will get the direction. This theta represents the direction. Okay. So next important concept we discussed in this lesson is projectile motion. So what do you mean by projectile? A body which is projected into air and which is allowed to move under the influence of gravity is called projectile. So suppose we have projected a body like this. It will go up, and when it reaches the maximum height, it will come down under the influence of gravity alone. So such type of motion, this is the path of that projectile, and this is a projectile, and this type of motion is known as projectile motion. So the object, suppose we have projected the object from here. So let this be the initial velocity of that projectile, okay, or the velocity with which the projectile is projected, and this velocity can be resolved into two components. First one is along the y-axis and another along x-axis. Let this angle be theta. So this component is u cos theta, because this is adjacent to theta. So the component which is adjacent to theta will be u cos theta, and the component adjacent to or other component will be sin theta, u sin theta. So in the previous case also we have resolved the vector A into two components, isn't it? AX and AY. So this was theta, and this AX is, this component AX is adjacent to theta, so it is A cos theta AX, and this component is AY is A sin theta, A sin theta. Okay, so like this we have resolved this initial velocity vector u, and here we need to find out the expression for time of flight. This is the time of flight 2u sin theta by g, and you must study the derivation. You can refer your notebook for that. It is well explained in that notebook. And next, vertical height. Vertical height means the maximum height to which the projectile has reached. So this is that vertical height, and that is h is equal to u square sin square theta by 2g. Horizontal range. Horizontal range is the horizontal distance through which the projectile has been traveled. So that is u square sin 2 theta by g. And maximum horizontal range. This horizontal range is maximum when sin 2 theta is maximum. That means when sin 2 theta is 90 degree. That is when theta equal to 90 by 2. That is 45 degree. So horizontal range is maximum when theta is 45 degree. And when you put theta 45 degree here, you will get to theta will be 90, sin 90 will be 1. So the maximum horizontal range is u square by g, and you must remember this expression for horizontal range. You can expect a numerical from this part. Okay, so this is horizontal range, time of flight, vertical height, horizontal range. And what is time of flight? Time taken by the projectile to go up and come down, that is time of flight. And you must study the derivation of all these concepts from your note. You can refer your note. Okay, today itself study all these things. Then we discussed about the uniform circular motion, and you had studied the basics of uniform circular motion in your class 9 physics. Even though it is a uniform motion, there will be some acceleration because the object changes its direction every point. Okay, so uniform circular motion is an accelerated motion, and in uniform circular motion you study this derivation v equal to r omega, where v is the linear velocity, omega is the angular velocity, r is the radius of the circular path. So this is the relationship between linear velocity v and angular velocity omega. So you can expect a question, how linear velocity and angular velocity are related, or give the relation between linear velocity and angular velocity. So what is the relation? It is v equal to r omega. Now centripetal acceleration. In a circular motion, objects have a tendency to move towards the center, and this acceleration is known as centripetal acceleration. It acts towards the center of the circular path, and it is v square by r, and or in terms of angular velocity it will be r omega square. And centripetal force, it is the force with which the object is attracted towards the center, and that is m into centripetal acceleration. So m into AC is v square by r or omega square r. So centripetal force is m into acceleration is r omega square or mv square by r. And you must also refer your notebook to study the derivation of all these concepts. Okay, so with this I have discussed important concepts of the second chapter also, next chapter also. So study these two chapters very well today itself. With this I am concluding today's session. We will meet in the next session with the revision of another chapters. Thank you. All of you stay safe, stay home.